Imagine surviving not one but two assassination attempts within weeks of each other. It happened to Donald Trump. In a recent conversation between Tucker Carlson and Piers Morgan, they dive deep into what went wrong, who might really be behind it, and why the media seems oddly quiet about the whole thing. They're not just talking conspiracy theories, they're questioning security failures, political motives, and even touching on history's most infamous assassination attempts. This video isn't just about Trump, it's about power, protection, and the dangerous game behind the public eye. Before we dive deeper into this wild conversation, let's get to know the two guys at the center of it all, Tucker Carlson and Piers Morgan. They're both known for their bold opinions and aren't exactly strangers to controversy. In fact, that's kind of their thing. Tucker Carlson is an American political commentator who became a household name thanks to his show, Tucker Carlson Tonight on Fox News. For years, he's been the go-to guy for hot takes on politics, culture, and, well, pretty much everything. Whether you love him or hate him, there's no denying his influence. Carlson's style? Direct, unfiltered, and often poking at topics many mainstream outlets tend to avoid. He's the kind of guy who will say what others are thinking but are too afraid to voice out loud. Born in 1969 in San Francisco, Tucker grew up in a media-savvy family. His father was a journalist, too. But Tucker's career really took off when he joined Fox News. Over time, he shaped his show into a powerhouse, attracting millions of viewers every night. His knack for stirring the pot made him both a fan favorite and a lightning rod for criticism. Now, let's flip the coin to Piers Morgan, a British journalist and TV personality known for his sharp wit and no-nonsense attitude. Piers has had a pretty colorful career, from editing the Daily Mirror in the UK to hosting Piers Morgan Live on CNN. If there's one thing you need to know about him, it's that he's never afraid to speak his mind. Whether he's grilling politicians, sparring with celebrities, or challenging public opinions, Piers thrives on debate. Born in 1965 in Surrey, England, Piers climbed the media ladder quickly. He's been on both sides of the Atlantic, making waves in British tabloids before becoming a familiar face in American media. His interviews are often headline makers, not because he's trying to be sensational, but because he knows how to get people talking. So, what happens when you put Tucker and Piers together? You get an explosive, no-holds-barred conversation that dives into topics most people tiptoe around. They both bring different perspectives, Tucker with his American conservative lens, and Piers with his British bluntness. But what they share is a knack for asking the uncomfortable questions and challenging the official narrative. In their recent chat, they didn't just skim the surface of Trump's assassination attempts. They dug deep, questioning security lapses, political motives, and media silence. It's the kind of conversation that makes you pause and think, wait, why aren't we talking about this more? But to really understand the weight of what they're discussing, we need to take a step back and look at the bigger picture, the history of presidential assassination attempts. Because as shocking as Trump's situation is, it's not the first time a leader has faced such a deadly threat. And unfortunately, it probably won't be the last. When it comes to assassination attempts on U.S. presidents, history is filled with shocking moments that have shaped the nation. Some of these events changed the course of history, while others barely made it past the headlines. But they all have one thing in common. They reveal just how fragile security can be, even for the most powerful people in the world. Let's start with one of the most infamous cases, Abraham Lincoln. In 1865, Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth while attending a play at Ford's Theater. Booth was an actor and Confederate sympathizer who believed he was avenging the South. Lincoln's death marked the first time a U.S. president was assassinated, and it sent shockwaves through the country. Then there's James A. Garfield, who was shot in 1881 by Charles J. Guiteau. Guiteau was a disgruntled office seeker who believed he deserved a government job. Garfield didn't die immediately. He battled infections for weeks before succumbing to his injuries. The incident highlighted the need for better medical care and changes in presidential security. Fast forward to William McKinley in 1901. McKinley was shot by Leon Czolgosz, an anarchist who blamed the president for the struggles of the working class. McKinley's assassination led to Theodore Roosevelt becoming president and ushered in a new era of American politics. Of course, no discussion about presidential assassinations would be complete without mentioning John F. Kennedy. In 1963, JFK was assassinated in Dallas, Texas by Lee Harvey Oswald, or at least that's the official story. Conspiracy theories have surrounded his death for decades, with many people questioning whether Oswald acted alone. The Zapruder film, which captured the tragic moment, has been analyzed endlessly, adding to the mystery. Even presidents who survived attempts on their lives faced life-changing moments. Ronald Reagan was shot in 1981 by John Hinckley Jr., who claimed he did it to impress actress Jodie Foster. Reagan survived, but the event was a stark reminder that even with the Secret Service, no one is completely safe. And let's not forget Gerald Ford, who faced 2 assassination attempts in 1975, both by women. The first was Lynette "Squeaky" Fromm, a follower of Charles Manson, who tried to shoot Ford but was quickly tackled. Just weeks later, Sarah Jane Moore also tried to assassinate him, but missed her shot. Talk about a close call. Now bringing it back to the present, Donald Trump. In July 2024, Trump was shot during a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. The shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, managed to breach security, and Trump was hit in the ear. Miraculously, he survived. But just weeks later, another man, Ryan Wesley Ruth, was caught with an AK-47 near Trump's golf course in Florida, allegedly planning another attempt. What makes Trump's situation even more alarming is the timing and frequency of these attempts. It's not just a one-off incident, it's part of a disturbing pattern. Tucker and Piers argue that these aren't just random acts of violence. They point to deeper issues with security protocols and possible political motivations. The big question they raise is, how could this happen, especially after the first attempt? Shouldn't the Secret Service have been on high alert? How did someone with an assault rifle get so close to a former president? This isn't about being paranoid, it's about asking the tough questions. Because history shows us that when security is taken for granted, the consequences can be deadly. When we think about presidential security, the first image that comes to mind is probably a group of serious-looking agents in dark suits and sunglasses, earpieces in, scanning the crowd. That's the Secret Service, and their job is to do one thing: protect the president at all costs. But as we've seen time and time again, even the most elite security can have its flaws. Tucker and Piers dive into this in their conversation, pointing out some pretty glaring issues with how the Secret Service handled Trump's recent assassination attempts. For starters, how did a guy with a rifle and a clear shot get anywhere near Trump at that rally? And weeks later, how did someone with an AK-47 sneak into a golf course where Trump was playing? These aren't just small mistakes, they're massive security failures. One key issue they discuss is complacency. After years of doing the same routines, it's easy for security teams to become too comfortable, especially when nothing has gone wrong for a while. But that's exactly when things tend to slip through the cracks. The Secret Service should be operating as if every day is a potential threat, not just relying on past successes. Then there's the problem of predictability. High-profile figures often have set schedules, and Trump is no different. When people know where you're going to be, it makes planning an attack a lot easier. Security experts say that mixing things up, changing routes, varying routines, can be one of the simplest ways to reduce risk. Another point Tucker and Piers bring up is the potential for insider threats. It's uncomfortable to think about, but sometimes the danger doesn't come from outside. If even one person within a security detail isn't fully committed to their duty, it can create vulnerabilities that outsiders can exploit. This is why background checks, continuous vetting, and internal monitoring are so important. They also discuss the role of technology in modern security. Drones, surveillance cameras, and advanced communication tools can provide real-time updates and track potential threats before they become serious. But technology isn't foolproof. The human element, the ability to read a situation, spot unusual behavior, and act quickly, is still the most critical part of any security operation. Finally, they highlight the importance of leadership within security agencies. The tone is set from the top, and if leaders aren't prioritizing safety and accountability, it trickles down. Strong leadership ensures that protocols are followed, mistakes are addressed, and teams are always improving. At the end of the day, Tucker and Piers aren't just pointing fingers. They're asking the tough questions. How did this happen? What went wrong? And more importantly, how can we prevent it from happening again? When it comes to major events like presidential assassination attempts, the media plays a massive role in shaping public perception. Tucker and Piers dive into this topic with sharp observations, questioning not just how these incidents are reported, but also what gets reported and why. One of the first things they point out is the selective coverage. Think about it. If there had been an attempt on someone like Obama or Biden, it would dominate headlines for weeks, with endless analysis, expert panels, and front-page stories. But with Trump, it felt like the coverage was surprisingly muted. Sure, it made the news, but it didn't seem to carry the same weight or urgency. Tucker argues that this is due to media bias. He believes many mainstream outlets have an inherent bias against Trump, which affects how they report on events related to him. Piers, while not always agreeing on the specifics, acknowledges that there's a noticeable difference in how stories are prioritized depending on the political figure involved. Another key issue they discuss is narrative control. Media organizations often shape stories to fit specific narratives that align with their audience's expectations. This isn't always about outright lying. Sometimes it's about choosing which facts to highlight and which to downplay. In the case of Trump's assassination attempts, the lack of in-depth investigation and follow-up coverage raises eyebrows. They also touch on the role of social media in modern news consumption. Platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube have changed the game. Information spreads faster than ever, but so does misinformation. Tucker and Piers note that while social media can help uncover hidden stories, it also contributes to the spread of conspiracy theories and half-truths, making it harder for people to know what's real. What's even more interesting is the public reaction. Despite the seriousness of the attempts on Trump's life, there seemed to be a lack of widespread outrage or concern. Tucker suggests this could be due to political polarization. In today's divided climate, some people are less sympathetic to threats against leaders they oppose. Piers adds that this desensitization is dangerous because it normalizes violence as just another part of the political process. At the heart of their discussion is a simple yet powerful question. Why aren't we talking about this more? Whether it's due to media bias, public apathy, or the fast-paced news cycle, the fact remains that attempts on a former president's life should be a big deal. But in this case, it feels like the story faded too quickly. Tucker and Piers challenge viewers to think critically about the news they consume. Don't just accept headlines at face value. Ask questions. Look deeper. Because sometimes the most important stories are the ones that get the least attention. So, what do we take away from all this? Tucker and Piers' conversation isn't just about Donald Trump or the specific attempts on his life. It's about the bigger picture, the vulnerabilities in our security systems, the biases in our media, and the divisions within our society. They've shown us that history has a way of repeating itself, often in patterns we fail to recognize until it's too late. Whether it's Lincoln, Kennedy, Reagan, or Trump, the threats to leaders are never truly isolated incidents. They're part of a larger narrative about power, influence, and the dangers that come with both. The real question isn't just how these events happen, but why we often ignore the warning signs. Is it complacency, political convenience, or have we become so desensitized that even attempts on a leader's life barely register anymore? Tucker and Piers challenge us to stay curious, to question what we're told, and to dig deeper than the headlines. Because in the end, awareness is the first step toward change. If we're not paying attention, we're not learning from the past, and that's when history is most likely to repeat itself. So next time you hear a story that feels like it's being swept under the rug, take a moment. Ask yourself, why?